else notice this on the Lululemon website recently? Starting November 1st, Peloton will become the exclusive digital fitness content provider for Lululemon, giving Lululemon Studio members access to thousands of world-leading Peloton classes. Peloton content will be updated on a weekly basis on the Studio device and companion apps, with new studio content also being produced by Lululemon through the end of next year. In addition, exclusive Peloton content will also be available to anyone enrolled in Lululemon's free Essential membership program. For more information on this exciting partnership and how it can help your well-being goals, click here. Now here leads to a corporate blog post about a partnership between Lululemon and Peloton, and it's the 5-year vision both partners have for it. So you might have heard me say the word Peloton a lot there, and really try to emphasize it, because you want to know what it's there instead of Mir, or Lululemon's $500 million, acquisition it made in 2020. Lululemon is winding that down as of today, November 1st. So why would a company like Lululemon be winding down one of its biggest technology acquisitions? Let's find out. On paper, Lululemon is an athleisure retailer, which means it makes its money selling athleisure. But the reason Lululemon has been so enduring is that it's not just a retailer. It's one of the few lifestyle brands out there. And what this means is that they're not just trying to sell you yoga pants. They're trying to sell you the entire experience that comes in the yoga pants. So by being a brand, they want to sell you everything from the moment you put the pants on to the moment you take the pants off. So that means accessories, water bottles, shoes, and even the classes that you might take in their apparel. And classes nowadays doesn't just mean like buying a gym or buying a national fitness studio. It means buying the software platforms or even buying the hardware that you take these fitness classes on, so that it aligns with the entire experience. They're trying to own the experience. So this raises the question, how does a retailer try to become a tech company, or at least a tech-savvy enough retailer? So the answer to this doesn't necessarily come through Lululemon, but a lot of technology investing of the past 10 years. So one of the theses that a lot of people tried to pour a lot of money into was connected fitness. Connected fitness usually means selling a piece of hardware plus a subscription to go along with it. So think Tonal, think Peloton, think ClassPass, think Oura Ring. These companies sell a piece of hardware plus the subscription to try to get you to unlock new insights about your health and fitness and wellness. Now, none of these companies really represented a giant leap forward in computing or hardware, but what was revolutionary about them was how they were branded and how they were marketed. Lululemon proved this demographic exists, and this demographic will spend money if you can create a brand that is part of the lifestyle rather than just selling people the cold hard economics of buying a device that costs in the thousands of dollars plus a subscription that you need to pay hundreds of dollars to use. So here's a dirty little secret about all of these companies. They're not profitable. They were never trying to be profitable either. What they were trying to do was grow. And by growing, they needed to create a brand. Because a brand takes the eyes off the economics of today, which for a lot of these companies, since they're hardware companies, are difficult, and focuses them onto what the economics could be if market conditions change over a given period of time. A lot of these companies were looking to get acquired or looking to have some other company eat a lot of the cost of production. As I just mentioned, hardware is hard because it's expensive to produce, it's expensive to manufacture, and it's also subject to all sorts of delays or snafus that come with pretty much taking something from a factory overseas to your porch when you order something online. Subscriptions were how they made money because subscriptions were how they built brand loyalty. Subscriptions in this environment were also just a sneaky way to demonstrate growth because it was a way to acquire new customers acquire new revenue without having to acquire new customers. This is something that investors were looking for at the time because, again, the emphasis was on growth, not discipline or finding a new critical mass out there. Could you keep extracting money from this Lululemon demographic? If the answer is yes, then you will have unlimited license to grow and hopefully brand your way to a buyer, or if market conditions change, become a publicly traded company. So Lululemon in this time period did not necessarily have to go build their own product of all of these brands in-house. A lot of them were gonna fail. A lot of new companies fail. But they were paying really close attention to the space and really close attention to what this demographic that they've so carefully cultivated was gravitating towards. Because as they were gravitating towards certain technology or a certain market, Lululemon could begin to strategically partner or strategically signal that this is up to our tier, which will drive consumer dollars and investor dollars. And this is the economic environment that Mirror was founded in 2018. Mirror was founded in 2018 by Bryn Putnam. She was a former New York City ballerina who went to Harvard Business School. After she had her first child, she wanted a more authentic way to do fitness classes at home. So she started building the proof of concept for Mirror with a Raspberry Pi at her kitchen table. So Mirror is an 8-foot mirror you could watch yourself do boutique fitness classes in while getting insights from something like an Apple Watch for how you're performing within them. So in interviews, Bryn Putnam said that she wanted this mirror to not just be an 8-foot mirror that costs $1,500 and $39 a month or more than $400 a year to use. She wanted it to be the third most important screen in your life. Now, quotes like this are critical when you're trying to raise money because what she's essentially doing is writing the investment memo for the associate here. Brand means going after the Lululemon demographic, and brands get money to grow. Hardware companies, because the economics are so difficult, they don't really get that benefit of the doubt. But if you can prove you can extract money from that Lululemon demographic, you will have unlimited or nearly unlimited license, I should say, to grow and keep demonstrating that stickiness between the brand and the customer. Third most important screen is a way to get investors to not look at the economics in front of their eyeballs, which is 8-foot, $1,500 mirror that costs more than $400 a year to use on top of it. It gets them towards could this supplant an iPad or another tablet? What could this be in the future besides what we're looking at now? This is another way that people thought about growth. Because you're trying to basically convince someone you can change the economics in front of their eyeballs into something far more lucrative, like a third screen. A lot of people made a lot of money off the first two screens. And since no one can really predict the future, regardless of what they tell you, gotta put your eggs in all the baskets. Why not an 8-foot mirror? As nuts as this may sound, this is how a lot of these pitches went by design. From the financial crash to COVID, interest rates were zero or near zero. And when interest rates are this low, that means the imperative is growth, not discipline. It means looking to what something could be in the future rather than how viable the economics right in front of your eyes are in any given moment. So a Lululemon tier brand will always trump the $1,500 8-foot mirror that costs more than $400 to use. Zero interest rates, covered with a very telegenic, Harvard-educated founder, also made it really easy to generate a huge hype cycle and a lot of FOMO that made it very easy for this company to raise and generate basically free media for itself. So all of this led to a $34 million Series B round that was announced in October of 2019. This led the company's funding up to $75 million. Celebrities like Karlie Kloss even invested in the company. Raising $75 million in a year, not bad for a one-year-old company. So a Series B investment isn't really like an early stage where you're just betting on the founder and how much you like them, but it's more trying to set them up to grow really rapidly. And for Mirror, that meant trying to go from appealing from 1% of the Lululemon demographic to 100% of the Lululemon demographic. And how they did that, well, they would need to do that is for at-home fitness to become much more accessible than it was in 2019, to bring the cost down and to get in front of a lot more eyeballs. So this was how, as the decade turned, how things needed to change. And when the decade turned, as we all know, a lot changed. As the decade turned, we got into COVID. And COVID and the ensuing lockdowns changed a lot about how we live our lives. One of the most obvious ones was how we work out. Gyms could have been closed due to the lockdown, and people could have been a lot more cautious of how they interacted with other people, like at a gym or at a fitness class, due to the virus. At-home fitness during this time soared in popularity and raised a staggering, borderline irresponsible amount of money during this period of time. Retail also saw a huge change. Malls saw a huge decline in foot traffic, but people also shifted pretty seamlessly to ordering stuff online. Lululemon did okay because it had a really good online footprint, and a lot of people wanted to work at home in a pair of new yoga pants they just bought online during this time. Another huge behavior change. So Lululemon wasn't in a terrible position to weather the storm. So that also meant in this economic environment, one other important thing to note is that interest rates were still zero or nearly zero. When interest rates are zero and you're doing okay, you're also in a position to take more risks than usual. So this meant a company like Lululemon, who had the perfect storm of conditions to really get their teeth into at-home fitness, acquired Mirror in the summer of 2020 for $500 million. This is pretty good given where Mirror was. A Series B investment is usually valued anywhere from 50 to 100 million. Definitely not 500 million. I've never seen that before. So people essentially got 5 times what they thought it was worth less than a year prior. A lot of people saw this initially as a win-win. It was heralded as the future of retail. And initially the partnership looked like it was going well. Investors got a solid, liquid payout during a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. And Lululemon got to now call itself a tech company and a connected fitness platform with this acquisition. So everybody was happy. It was a win-win. It was the future of retail. And initially that looked like it was going to be true. Mirror and its subscriptions brought in $170 million in revenue in 2020. And in the beginning of 2021, Lululemon set Mirror's annual revenue targets at $250 million to $275 million. But this period of time, the beginning of 2021 and late 2020, represented the peak of connected fitness. By the end of 2021, Lululemon cut those revenue targets to $125 million to $130 million, or basically in half. It was beginning to be reported that Lululemon wrote down the investment by $442 million, claiming it to be worthless or not remotely what it paid for it. Rumors also started to swirl that they were looking for a buyer. It also started to come out that they could not find a buyer and ultimately decided to wind the company down. So how did this go so wrong so quickly? There are a few places to look. The first is 2020 and how we spent and invested money during this time period. A lot of investing just basically revolves around having a vision of the future and trying to lock that in financially. And the vision of the future we were trying to lock in 2020 was 2020, or the most historically anomalous year of most of our lifetimes. In 2020, if you were any sort of video communication platform, medtech, telehealth, or anything with the words at home in front of it, which includes at-home fitness, you could raise a staggering, mind-boggling, borderline irresponsible amount of money. Interest rates were zero, just like they were, so there was a lot of money to place on a lot of bets for growth. But as the worst of COVID started to wane, people's behavior started to change back to where it was before, and they weren't as inclined to basically do everything at home. They wanted to go back to the gym. They wanted to go back to fitness classes. The financial cushion for some people of the pandemic, or the financial stimulus from the pandemic, was also beginning to wane. So people weren't really trying to go spend $1,500 plus $400 a year for the subscription on essentially a mirror they couldn't use. While Lululemon lowered the price for the mirror during this time period, $995 plus $400 a year to use is still not an accessible price point for a lot of people. It might have got you 5% of the Lululemon demographic, but not 100%. In addition to this, interest rates began to climb in the later half of 2021 and 2022. This meant that discipline became more important than growth. This also meant that investors had to answer for the economics that they were looking at, rather than what they hoped the economics would be 5 to 10 years from now. This isn't bad. This doesn't kill innovation. This makes it disciplined. Good companies can survive with discipline and oversight. And in the long run, if you go kill something that isn't working, Instead of throwing millions of dollars at this, you'll probably be more innovative in the future. Discipline also ties into the consumer front. These companies, with the economics they had, were going to struggle to reach a critical mass. They needed to capture way more than 1% of the Lululemon demographic. They needed to capture the portion of the demographic who would totally spend $38 extra for yoga pants with pockets. Pockets, Lululemon knows their market, but would completely bulk its spending $1,500 on an 8-foot mirror and spend $400 a year on top of that. This was never worth what Lululemon paid for it, and it was never going to reach a critical mass with those economics, even if the cheapest version only cost $990 something. 2020 was not the future, and pretending it was the future or that things were always going to go back to the way they were instantly was a mistake. What we failed to imagine here was the day after. The day after wasn't going to look like December 30th, 2019 or April 1st, 2020. We really struggled to figure out what the post-COVID happy medium would look like and what these companies could potentially be worth in that sort of economic environment. Moral of the story, we should all want to build things with a Raspberry Pi at our kitchen table that resembles the world we want to live in. That was never the problem. The problem was that it was never worth the $500 million that Lululemon paid for it. Even in the most tailored in a lab conditions for this business to thrive, it really only generated $170 million in revenue. And while that's impressive, it's still not remotely worth what they paid for it. And this way of propping up businesses isn't good for anyone in the long run. It's not good for the entrepreneur because they are going to reach a point where they can't grow. It's not good for the investor because sometimes they'll invest more than the company is worth and not get their money back or money out, and that affects things like pension funds and university endowments. And for the consumer to constantly kind of be at the mercy of very shady economics and using something that really wasn't as viable as that might have been marketed or FOMO'd out to be. FOMO is not how you should make health or fitness decisions. FOMO cannot replace sound science or sound economics, and none of these connected fitness companies really have both going for them. Always be skeptical of brands that are trying to sell you something that you've done forever, like physical activity, in a form that costs you more than ever before. The great thing about physical activity is there's really no price tag on it. There's no price tag on moving your body and gaining insights from how you feel from that. You can do that intuitively as a human. That's one of the best parts about being human and one of the best parts of physical activity. And it's free. And that's one of the best parts about it. And we should always remember that. Thanks, guys. Obligatory reminder to hit all the buttons. And let me know what you thought. Let me know if you want to see more like this. And make sure to hit that subscribe button to keep up with what this channel does in the future.